What's up guys, it's the new sensation Big Annotation here. Me and Tom from Team -2 have been getting really into this Cookie Run Braverse TCG. It's originally a Korean TCG and is being pushed a lot by a League of Legends content creator called LS as a high skill ceiling but low skill floor trading card game, and we've been enjoying it a lot. It definitely holds up to the claims, and it is scheduled to get an English release soon. But nonetheless, it is an extremely fun game. I highly recommend giving it a try. It has got very easy accessibility, but a lot of room to grow. And so we're going to be breaking down how to play, how to get started, and where you can look to find other people to play. I'll start off with game setup. I'm going to be going over how you can set up your first ever game of Cookie Run Braverse TCG, as well as going over the different zones on the board and what they each represent. Here is the deck zone, and this will be where you place your deck throughout the game. Decks in Cookie Run are a hard limit of 60 cards. The only other deck restriction outside of that is that you're only able to run up to 16 flip cookies, which is a special type of cookie that we'll be covering later on, but that's important to bear in mind when building your deck. This is the trash zone, and this is the equivalent to a graveyard in other TCGs. This is where cards will go when they're used up, so if a card is being discarded out of your hand, that'll be where this goes. Or if an item or a stage is leaving the field, they'll be sent to the trash. Important to note that there are some effects that send cookies on your field to the trash, but most of the time if a cookie dies, it's going to go to the break area, which we'll be discussing in a second. This is the stage zone, and this will be where you place your stage cards. Stages are a specific type of card that can remain on the field indefinitely, and we'll be covering more about them later in the video. This is the support area, and it functions the same as a land area or energy area for other card games. At the start of each of your turns, you can place a card from your hand into the support area in active mode. Any card can be placed into the support area at this point, and it'll generate the same mana color as the original color of that card. The main area of the board is the battle area, and this will be where you place your cookies to do battle. Important to note that you don't have to pay any costs to play cookies from your hand. You can just play them down, and the main cost is attributed to any abilities or attacks that come from them. The other main thing to note with the battle area is that your limit to the number of cookies you can have down is a maximum of 2. So a big part of this game is being able to find ways to cycle your cookies through the battle area so that you're able to play more cookies from your hand, and you're not just stuck with some very weak cookies on the battle area and you're not able to deal with your opponent's board. This is the break area, and it's effectively a life area or a damage area. This is where your cookies will go when they are killed through combat or through damage effects. Effectively, if a cookie is dying and it isn't dying from an effect that specifically says that it sends it to the trash, it'll go to this break area. The way that you win the game is by putting cookies into your opponent's break area until the cookies in their break area have a combined total level of 10 or greater. This can make it quite dangerous to play your stronger cookies early on, as if they die, you'll end up taking a lot of damage in return, and you need to be able to make sure that you can dish out that sort of damage to your opponent before your stronger cookie dies. As well, it can make for some very interesting math games, as ideally you want to get your break area to a combined level of 9, and then start playing some of your stronger units to effectively look to come back from the game from that 9 break. For all you mill players out there, you may be wondering, well, can I alternatively win by decking my opponent out? And there's actually a very interesting rule when it comes to the Cookie Run Braverse TCG around deckouts, and you actually do not lose from decking out in this game. What happens once you reach 0 cards in deck is you go through your graveyard or your trash, you find a level 1 cookie and place it into your break area, and then you shuffle your trash and put it back into your deck pile. So there's no way to deck out, but it does actually inflict damage upon your break area, so again, something to be mindful of when you're hitting those higher points in break. Now, you may not be able to deck your opponent out, but there is actually an alternative way to win in this game, and that is if your opponent is unable to play another cookie card from their hand with 0 cookies on board. If a cookie dies in this game, the controller of that cookie has the opportunity to immediately play another cookie from their hand. And if the number of cookies on a player's board reaches 0, that player then has to play a cookie from their hand. If they're unable to play a cookie from their hand at that point, they automatically lose the game. This is to prevent any situations where your opponent just leaves their board empty, and so you're not able to build their break area up to 10, and the game at that point would kind of reach a stalemate. You and your opponent can start by deciding who will go first, determining through a dice roll, rock, paper, scissors, or the flip of a coin. Any method will work. Important to note that the player who goes first is unable to use an attack action on their turn. They are able to use other activated abilities or effects throughout their turn, just no attacks. They are also unable to draw at the start of their first turn. Once you have decided which player is going first, both of you will draw 6 cards from your deck, and you have the option to perform 1 mulligan. The way the mulligan works in this game is you place your hand back into the deck in its entirety, you shuffle your deck again, and then draw a new 6 cards. And each player has the option to do that once at the start of the game. Once your mulligan has been completed, or you're both happy with your hands, each player will place a cookie from their hand face down onto the board, and then flip them both face up simultaneously. Once they've both been flipped up, both players draw a health for their cookie, and the first player will start their first turn.
So now we can take a look at some of the cards in a bit more detail. There are 4 types of cards in total. You have cookies, items, traps, and stages. And we'll start with cookies. So in the top left of your cookie, you'll see a level value, which can range from 1 to 3. This is what the break area counts, and is obviously the key to winning or losing the game. Typically, the lower the level of the cookie, the less powerful it'll be, where your higher level cookies will be stronger, but obviously when they faint, they'll put you that step closer to losing the game. Then in the top right, you'll see the health of the cookie. When a cookie is played, the first thing that you do is take cards from the top of your deck face down, equal to the HP value, and put them under the cookie. When a cookie is dealt damage, you start from the top card of the HP pile, you flip it, activate any flip effects, which we'll get to soon, and place that card in the trash. Damage is dealt 1 at a time, and then when a cookie reaches 0 HP, that's when you put it into your break area. In the lower half of the card, you'll see the attack of the card. This will come with the cost, the damage, and maybe an effect. In this example, you can see that the attack costs 3B, which means 3 blue in the translation, and will deal 3 damage to your opponent's cookie. Some cards can also have colourless costs, which would be represented by an M in the translated cards, meaning that you can pay any colour resource. It's colourless if you're familiar with Magic. Some attacks may also have a then effect following the initial attack and damage. It's important to note that these then effects are paid for and resolved separately to the initial attack. Above the attack, some cookies might have an ability. There are 3 types of abilities at the minute, which are On Reveal, Activated, and Blocker. On Reveal abilities trigger when a cookie is first played. Activated abilities can be used by a cookie that's in play during your own turn. And Blocker can be used when an opponent's cookie declares an attack to redirect it to that cookie. There are also tags, which could be only on your turn, or once per turn. So in this example, you can see that this card's ability is an On Reveal that can only trigger on your turn, where the cost is to discard 3 cookies from your hand and you can deal some damage to your opponent's cookies. And finally, some cookies will have a flip effect. So on the original cards, there's just a little yellow strip at the bottom, but on the translation, these are marked with the word flip in brackets. Flip effect is a unique type of effect which can only trigger when it is flipped face up in your cookie's HP after they take damage. This example shows one of the more common flip effects, where you can discard a card from your hand to heal an HP in your cookie. It's important to note that flips do fully trigger and resolve in the middle of damage being dealt, so this example can potentially save a cookie from death if it's the last card flipped up in the cookie's life. Also worth noting that you are only allowed 16 flip cookies in your deck. Next up we've got items, which can be seen with the item tag in the top left. These cards can only be activated during your turn, and they give you a one-time effect for the cost which is written on the card. Once they've resolved, you put them in the trash, and items can be used for a variety of effects, which are often related to the colour archetypes, which we'll get onto a bit later. Next up we've got traps, which can be seen with the trap tag in the top left. These are like counters in most games, where you can activate one counter, or trap, when your opponent's cookie declares an attack. You can only activate one trap per attack, and this also triggers at the same time as blocker, so you can't activate both. You can either activate a trap or a blocker. Often these cards are just used to sort of reduce damage or provide some sort of benefit as a result from the attack. Finally, we have stage cards, which you can see with the stage tag in the top left. These are similar to your fields and your stadiums in other games. Both players have a stage area, so you can play your stage alongside your opponents, and these are just used to provide long-term benefits throughout a game.
Now I'll go through a brief explanation of how a normal turn will play out for the game. At the start of the turn, you'll draw 2 cards from your deck, unless it is the first turn of the game. You'll then go on to place one card from your hand into the support area. This is technically optional, but it is generally recommended, especially in the early stages of the game. You'll then proceed to the main phase of the turn, in which you can take most actions, including playing items, cookies or stages, or using the abilities of cookies or stages already on your board, or attacking your opponent's cookies. It is important to note that there is no attack phase or battle phase separate to the overall main phase, so you can attack and play other cards as you wish, and this can lead to some much more rewarding sequencing. Once you've completed all of the attacks and actions that you'd like to take during the turn, you can pass turn to your opponent.
So next up, I figured we'd take a look at the different colours in the game. We can go through the identities of the colours, and that will help you decide which colour you might want to play the most, which you like the sound of. Starting with blue. Blue is very much the draw powerhouse, it seems, with a lot of scrying and a lot of drawing. It then discards cards later in the game from its hand for some powerful effects. Blue effectively cycles through its deck at least once most games, and one of the cards that helps you achieve that is this Salt Crystal Trident Trap that's on the screen. It's very similar to Graceful Charity from Yu-Gi-Oh! And is a big factor in how blue draws so many cards.
In Cookie Run, green is your ramp and support manipulation colour. It has multiple ways to add cards into the support area outside of the normal once per turn, and it has a couple of different ways to pick up cards from the support area and swap them with cards in your hand, or just straight add them to your hand. It can take a lot of setup, but once you get to the late game it can be very enjoyable to play, as you're able to finish off your opponent with a flurry of attacks and effects because of the amount of support that you are able to generate throughout that game.
So from red seems to be very focused on high damage, which means it will either have to damage its own cookies as a cost, or it will have to discard cards as a cost to deal such high damage. Red's also capable of spending resources to increase the power of its own cookies. As you can see through the Brave cookie on screen, this is a very common effect in red. Red also has a lot of direct damage or ping damage outside of attacks, so that means you don't have to deal with potential traps that your opponent might have.
Yellow's colour identity is all around break area manipulation. It has a couple of ways to interact with the break area, including swapping cards of equal level from your break area with cards in your hand or on your field, playing cards from your break area, as well as just straight up healing damage that you've taken throughout the game that is sat in your break area. It is currently the only colour that has a way to heal damage that you've already taken, which is obviously a very strong mechanic. Because of this, it has unfortunately had 2 cards banned, but it is still a very playable colour, and it is also very rewarding to play. You also sometimes get effects based on how much of a certain card type you might have in the break area, which can often lead to you wanting to take lots of damage early, and then being able to dish out a lot back, but you also have the option to play control, with the healing effects that you have and with the playing from break area effects instead.
Purple's a really unique playstyle and kind of focuses on the alternate win condition of the game, which is where your opponent can't place a cookie down. Because of this, a lot of the purple cards will place both their own and their opponent's cookies in the trash instead of trying to deal damage, just to force all the cookies out of your opponent's hand. Since you're placing all of your own cookies in the trash as well, you will have a large amount of cards in your trash, which is why a lot of purple cards do also offer benefit from having large trash areas. Both of these sort of purple traits can be seen on this Wind Archer cookie here, where it can trash an opponent's level 3 cookie, as well as deal extra damage with a large amount of cards in its own trash.
Now you may be thinking, this game sounds amazing, where can I start playing? Well, we've got you covered on that too. The first place to start would be the Cookie Run Discord, set up by LS, who I mentioned before. There are tons of people in there, both new players and experienced ones, who are always around for games and always down to help teach new players as well. They have a Google Doc full of English translations available for proxies to play webcam, or just to have a look at what the cards do in a readable format, unless you speak Korean of course. There is a tabletop simulator mod set up by some of the people in that Discord, so if you want to play on tabletop rather than printing out proxies for webcam, you can just download tabletop if you haven't got it already, and set up some games on there with some friends. And in the Cookie Run Discord there are also regular tournaments being organised, including a league which is starting up, in which you'd play 1 game a week, you'd organise a time with your opponent for that week, and you'd get your game done with them, and so it's just quite nice and easy for that. The other place I'd recommend would be the Scrub Games Discord, in which there's also regular discussions regarding the game, and we're pushing for some regular locals, hopefully weekly, and that will either be on Tabletop Simulator or on webcam. Go check out those links in the description. I'll have both the Discord links in the description, and if you are interested in the Tabletop Simulator mod, you should just be able to type in Cookie Run on Steam under the Tabletop Simulator tab, and it should come up there. Other than that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you check out the game. It is very, very fun. I highly, highly recommend it. And other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next one.